I think sometimes parents are looking at their kids and struggle and thinking, it's just us. It's just me. I've done something wrong as a parent, or my child has a flaw. But this, in fact, is a national mental health crisis. Is that an overstatement?
No, not at all. In fact, I don't at this point think it just is a national mental health crisis. Every country I'm working in, from Ireland to the Philippines to Vietnam, I just flew into Abu Dhabi. They're all concerned about their kids. We got to get on board together on this one.
And it's showing up in all kinds of negative behavior among
Yes.
children. I'm hearing educators saying that with kids coming back to school, they're seeing crying behavior, they're seeing a clinginess, they're seeing more bullying behavior, they're seeing more depression, more anxiety. These aren't just statistics, they're actually observing this in the classroom and the hallways.
Yeah, I think the thing that also is what parents and teachers particularly are saying, they're just not the same as they used to be. And rightly so, they've hit a real trifecta of loneliness, fear, and uncertainty. And if they haven't had protective buffers to be able to help them learn how to cope with the stress in life, it just keeps falling apart and the stress keeps building.
Is this maybe going to be the impetus for us to add into the curriculum in schools, teaching kids how to live? I know we need to teach them like reading, writing, and arithmetic, geography, biology. But is this maybe going to be the impetus to start teaching kids life skills, how to recognize when behavior is anxiety, when it's depression, when it has gone beyond just daily annoyances to the point of actually being worthy of asking for help from the counselors or running up a flag to their parents that, hey, I've gone beyond just ups and downs, I'm actually experiencing some mental health problems?
I think absolutely 100%, because I've been doing focus groups, Dr. Phil, that's been fascinating. And if you really wanted to know or confirm that there's a problem, ask the kids. The first thing that many of them are saying is we're just not prepared for life. We're really well educated. We've got the test scores down. We're okay with the grades, but we just don't know how to handle the bumps and the bruises of life. Many of them also blame us. We've been helicoptered too much. Our parents have been rescuing us. I know they don't want us to fail, but what's going to happen when the big bumps come along the way? And those are kids, quote unquote. I think it's time for the reboot. That first, we've got to keep in mind that, yeah, we've gone through 2 years of a pandemic. But honestly, it's a very uncertain, fear-based new kind of a world that who knows what next is coming down the road, which means GPA and test scores are not the only thing that's going to help our kids. They have got to be better prepared for life.
Well, they're not, and I think we're going the other way because I look at what's happening at the university levels, and let's jump up to that for a minute. I always thought universities are where you went to get educated and hear differing points of view, where you could have your point of view, you could hear another point of view, you could have debates, you could test out your thinking. But now it seems like a third of students say it's okay to shout down a speaker that has a different point of view than you do. Universities are saying we'll provide a safe space for you to go if you're traumatized by someone else having a different view or value than you. And then we're going to dump these kids out the other end of the educational chute into the real world, where they're not providing them safe spaces. They're expecting them to get out in the rough and tumble world and compete, and we haven't prepared them to deal with the fact that everybody doesn't think like them, everybody doesn't agree with them, and they call that trauma. Hell, that's not trauma. That's just people disagreeing with them. You can have 2 different points of view, or 5 or 6, and we're not teaching them to deal with anxiety or depression or feeling marginalized or lonely or whatever. We've got to teach them coping skills, even cognitive behavioral therapy, where we can teach them to reframe issues.
Yeah. Oh, boy. My head is nodding up and down and up and down and up and down. There's so many points on this one. First of all, we think sometimes that this pandemic caused it all. But if you rewind this, what we begin to look at, what Harvard was telling us and Yale was telling us, that the number one time our American kids were most likely to drop out was end of freshman freshman year, first semester of college. That was 10 years ago. They ran out of mental health facilities. They ran out of counselors because they said the kids are great in terms of the GPA. They're 4.0s or 7.3s, but they get their first B plus and they're just dumbstruck. Risk adverse, Yale University. If you don't tell a kid there's going to be an emotionally charged episode in a book, you can be put up for charges in your Yale in terms of being a professor. We're talking things fall apart and To Kill a Mockingbird. Resilience is something you learn through experiences. And one of the biggest things I think we've done is, we love our children dearly. But if we keep trying to overprotect them and bubble wrap them, the first little challenge comes away, they're going to just fall through. We rob children of learning resilience by trying to help them think it through and protect them too much.
Well, that's what I'm concerned about. In some of the statistics, and you actually provided these from some of the sources that I've read as well, between March and October of 2020, we saw mental health hospital emergencies among kids rose 24% for kids 5 to 11, 31% 12 to 17. We've seen more than 50% increase in suspected suicide attempt emergency visits in girls 12 to 17 in 2021 compared to 2019. Clear evidence that kids are having emotional problems that they just simply weren't having before. Now, I know they were having these before, but not at this level. And we're also, you mentioned this the other day, we're not only seeing them not progress developmentally, we're seeing them regress.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think the first thing is you've nailed it. A crisis only amplifies a pre-existing problem. So all of those issues of the upsell and going to ER visits are almost a predictable case. But after a while, the other thing, Dr. Phil, that happens is a kid, when they don't have resilience and they don't have buffers, it's just that they're all of a sudden are going to start falling apart. What we're now seeing is that children are regressing in terms of where they used to be in learning. We sort of knew that one. But the second thing is emotionally regression. So we're seeing a lot of parents saying, oh my gosh, he's so irritable lately, or he was toilet trained for the little one, and now all of a sudden he's wetting the bed again. Or she just is having these temper tantrums that I thought she was fine. Loneliness, the social anxiety is starting to kick in. So all of the traits the kid used to have, or the abilities they used to have, are starting to slide backward. And it just means that they are to the point where they don't have any level of any more coping skills, and it's all fallen through.
You talk about something called agency here, and I'm talking to Dr. Michele Borba. She's an educational psychologist. I'm pulling heavily from her book, Thrivers, the surprising reasons why some kids struggle and others shine. And I highly recommend it. I've read it cover to cover, every word. It needs to be a manual that you keep with you. I said the other day, you want to buy this book, you want to read it, then you want to buy 3 copies and give it to your best friends because they will thank you forever for doing that. You say that parents need to give their kids agency. What do you mean by that?
Well, one of the things that we've discovered, the fascinating thing about resilience, is it's really been evidence-based on why some kids do struggle and others shine. And one of the highest correlations of a thriver to me is a kid who says, I got it. I got this, Mom. I'll get through it. Agency are the skill sets, not GPA or test scores, but the ability maybe to know I've got a problem. So, okay, I'm going to start being a problem solver. I'll figure another way through. Or I've got stress, or gee, this is really tough. I'm going to take a deep breath. They've got the self-control or the coping strategies to be able to use in the moment. And that is what gets them through. My thing when I was writing Thrivers was to realize the commonality is not only agency, but thrivers are also made, not born. It was not that they were born with the DNA or you had a certain zip code that got you through it. Some phenomenal researchers have been studying kids, homelessness children, poverty, kids who are growing up in war zones. Emmy Werner is a gold mine. For 40 years, she studied the same cohort of kids who shouldn't have made it. She's shocked as about the third of the way through it. She said, my gosh, many of them are. Why? And she finds the commonality are 2 things. And I think this is the piece on what's going on with our kids. First, they have caring champions who don't have the stress levels, meaning the adult, who are there in their lives and refuse to give up on the children. The second one, though, is they've learned protective buffers, how to cope, how to handle the stress, how to say no, all of those things that you don't learn overnight, Dr. Phil. But something along the way, there's a parenting agenda that says, I'm going to help my kid learn to cope with life. And that becomes part of the key parenting agenda for the child.
That resonates so much with me because I can tell you, I think I've really been blessed in that I can honestly say everything I've ever done, I believe has prepared me for what I'm now doing. And that wouldn't be true if I had been an engineer for a while and then jumped to this. But everything I've ever done, every life experience I've ever had, it seems to have prepared me for now working with the people that I work with, because even the negatives. My dad was a really bad alcoholic. As we know, children of alcoholics become very independent because you can't count on your parent. And my mother was loving but very passive. My dad was an alcoholic and very absent or combative. So I, at a very early age, had to become resilient. If I was going to get something done, I had to do it. There wasn't anybody else. And then, fortunately, I had some athletic ability, so I had coaches that took a real interest, and they put their arm around my shoulder and said, okay, we're going to help you get through this. And it's the formula you just described. A kid who says, I got this, I'm going to figure it out. And then a supportive adult that says, I'm going to help you help yourself do this. And it really did turn into resilience from a very young age. And it wasn't somebody helicoptering. I had to figure it out. And that's so important. And we're not letting kids do that today.